What I want to do in this video is spend some time talking about the influences that exist on Parliament. Specifically, what we're going to be doing is thinking about the fact that Parliament ultimately is shaped by numerous different influences, both internal and external. And these influences essentially guide which issues Parliament will address. It will guide how laws are shaped and also what priorities are reflected within the legislation that ultimately gets passed. And this lesson is going to talk about a variety of these different influences, what they are, how they influence various different political processes, specifically when it comes to the passing of legislation within Parliament. So, first and foremost, this one should come as no surprise whatsoever. Political parties obviously guide the ways in which parliamentary legislation is passed and the ways in which it is made. The ruling party's ideology, so the party that forms government, for example, and the manifesto commitments that they have when it came to their winning of an election, have a significant impact on the legislative agenda of Parliament. So when a Conservative government is in power, which is not the case at the moment, but it has been for a very long time previously, then they may prioritise laws which may be focused on government spending reduction, while a Liberal government, such as the Labour Party, or if a Liberal Democrats ever get into power, they might focus on expanding social programmes or environmental protections. The ruling party will then typically control the legislative agenda in the House of Commons. This allows them to introduce bills that align with the priorities of that particular party. And in addition to this, the Prime Minister and key cabinet members will play a critical role in determining which of these policies are prioritised. And so within the sort of party structure, you also have the enforcement of discipline and unity among party members through the whip system, through the system of whipping MPs into voting for particular initiatives that people want them to vote for. This essentially ensures that they vote in line with the stance of the party that they are associated with. This can lead to pressure on MPs, and it could even lead to MPs supporting legislation that doesn't necessarily align with their own personal views or even align with the interests of their constituents, but still would align with the party line, and so therefore have to vote for it regardless. Another influence on Parliament is public opinion. So members of Parliament are elected to represent their constituents and to represent the interests of their constituents. So as a result of this fact, public opinion, specifically the public opinion of their constituents on a variety of different issues, will be able to influence the MPs' positions and their actions within Parliament. MPs want to retain their seats, they want to get re-elected at the next election, presumably, and so they have to pay attention to these issues, and they have to pay attention to issues that are popular and issues that are important to their constituents. These issues might be issues that are national in nature, so maybe the constituents have a particular tendency to support a particular national issue, or they could be local issues, an issue that is only really unique to the constituency that that member of Parliament is representing. If public sentiment strongly supports or opposes these policies, then MPs may be more inclined to reflect that in their own voting behaviour. The bridge between these two different institutions, the public and Parliament, is of course the media, where the media essentially acts in shaping public opinion and helping to bring attention to certain issues and to reduce the attention of other issues. Media campaigns, investigative journalism, and news coverage pressures Parliament to address specific issues or to even introduce laws that are in response to widespread public concern. Another important factor and influence on Parliament are pressure groups. Pressure groups are organised groups that seek to influence Parliament or the government on particular specific issues. Interest groups, for example, are a specific type of pressure group that focus on a very specific interest within society. So trade unions, of course, have an interest in labour organisation, and also things like professional associations, like the British Medical Association is associated with the medical industry. You also have cause groups. These are not focused on particular interests, but are focused on causes. So, for example, environmental protection. Greenpeace is associated with the broad aim, the broad cause of environmental protection. By contrast, and in addition to, Amnesty International is also a cause pressure group, because the main cause that is associated with is things like human rights and issues of that nature. So, how do these pressure groups then influence Parliament? Well, they could do so through a variety of different methods. So, for example, lobbying, through organising public campaigns, through the raising of awareness, through providing research or expert evidence to members of Parliament, even groups who are seen as outsider groups, so groups that aren't actually directly associated with lobbying or being insiders within Parliament. They may organise protests or petitions or social media campaigns, all of which can have a very important and, in fact, in some cases, costly results for specific MPs who choose to ignore these pressure groups. Professional lobbyists, often hired by businesses or industry groups, will interact directly with members of Parliament. These are known as insiders or insider groups. Whereas people who are not professional lobbyists may be outsider groups, and so they don't exactly influence or interact directly with MPs, ministers, or parliamentary committees. They instead have to pressure the government through other means and methods. The media, as I've already mentioned, plays a significant role when we think about the ways in which the public agenda is set by being able to highlight particular issues over other particular issues. So they might highlight healthcare crises, they might highlight environmental concerns, or even political scandals. This can then lead to Parliament being forced to act on issues that it may otherwise choose to overlook. An example that you can think of right now that is taking place at the time of recording in January 2025 is the debate around grooming gangs and the legislative agenda and the legislative push that Parliament has actually implemented as a result of a billionaire making points and references on Twitter to the ideas of grooming gangs, discovering this news story that is like 10 years old and then now setting the agenda in Parliament. That is a one-to-one example of something that is taking place right now at the time of recording this lesson. Media outlets can sway public opinion. This can in turn influence MPs and pressure Parliament to act on popular issues. As I've just mentioned, that you will have no better example in the modern day than the example I just highlighted right then. In-depth media investigations can also reveal injustices or systematic problems in certain areas of society, again promoting and prompting Parliament to address these issues through new legislation or reforms. So, uncovering scandals, for example, might lead to parliamentary inquiries. You also have the Law Commission. The Law Commission is also a very important way in which Parliament is influenced. The Law Commission itself is just an independent body that is responsible for reviewing and recommending reforms to the law. It identifies specific areas of the law that might be outdated, areas that might be unclear or inconsistent, or maybe have been ruled upon in certain ways that are not really speaking to the particular aim of the legislation itself, and then will make a report on how to better word or how to better write legislation and independent legal reform that can help Parliament to just tie these loose ends up. Parliament then often considers the Commission's recommendations when it comes to updating and reforming laws. This is often done through parliamentary select committees, which is made up of MPs with expertise in specific areas, where they can investigate current issues and report their findings to Parliament specifically. These reports by the Law Commission influence lawmaking by providing evidence-based recommendations to better improve the implementation of the law in those particular areas. In addition to this, when we think about things like systemic failures or scandals or disasters, public inquiries can be set up in response to these major events, and this can also lead to legislative reforms based on the findings that are made in those inquiries.